Hey, this is Dave with the Shepherd School, and today what we're going to do is disassemble a Glock slide. I've got a field strip Glock slide here. Okay, doesn't really matter which kind they are because they're all pretty much the exact same. To do this, I've got my basic armorer's toolkit, the little punch, little $2 punch that Glock sells. And when we take this apart, I want you to know this is beyond basic field stripping, and if you don't know how to field strip your gun, you probably ought not to mess with this, and you really ought to have a reason to do this unless you're a Glock armorer. Maybe you're changing out a part or so. You know, you mess this up, it's going to be hard for you to explain, you know, what you did if you haven't had the training to do it. But, you know, it's pretty simple, so here we go. Alright, inside your slide, this is the firing pin lug. It's connected to the firing pin, or it's part of the firing pin. See how it moved up and down like that? It popped up. Well, right underneath it, there's a little spot where if you put the pin, you can pull down. Okay? When you do that, you're relieving spring pressure on this back plate. So we're just going to stick that in there, right under the firing pin lug, and we're going to press down. Now before we slide this back plate off, I'm going to put my thumb here to keep the spring from shooting across the room. Okay, so push down, and then I'm going to slide that back plate off. So here's the spring pressure. Here's the second spring. Okay, take that off. You've got the firing pin assembly, and then you've got the EDP assembly, or the extractor depressor plunger assembly. Okay, if you just press up on that lug, the whole firing pin assembly comes apart, or comes out. Then right here, if you just stick your little fingernail in there, pull up on that spring, and the EDP comes out. Okay, we'll talk about both of those parts in a second. Now the next thing that you need to do, it's a firing pin safety button. Okay, part of the firing pin safety. Here it is, the firing pin safety. If you push that down, see that shot out? It also had the extractor come out, because that is what holds the extractor in. So push that down, pull the piece out, fully field stripped, minus taking the sights off, and there's a little polymer tube inside the firing pin channel, so to basically keep you from having to put a lot of lubrication in there. That polymer tube is press fit, and it should not come out. If it does, then it probably needs a new one. Here is all the assemblies and pieces that came out of our Glock slide. Firing pin assembly, your firing pin safety and spring, and your EDP, your extractor depressor plunger. Now Glock is pretty interesting in that this spring is what puts the pressure on your extractor to have that reliable Glock extracting. And Mr. Glock, when he designed it, tried to make everything as similar as he could throughout types of guns and calibers and such. And so for almost every Glock, this pin is going to be exact same. If you have a long frame Glock, you might have a slightly longer pin, but this pin's pretty much interchangeable for most guns. This spring is going to be interchangeable for all Glock models, but what makes it different is because that the length of this plunger assembly is what reliably extracts your cartridges. For different calibers, this is going to be different. This little plastic bearing bushing thing. Okay, in a 9 or a 380, it's going to be black. Okay, so a black one is the right size for a 9mm. If you have a white one, then you either have a 40, 357, SIG, you know, or 45 gap. Okay, it's a little bit different length. And then if you have an olive one or a green one, you have either a 10 or a 45 ACP. Now you can get conversion barrels for different guns, but you're never going to be as reliable as a gun that's properly designed for the caliber, because this is thousandths of an inch difference, but it does make a difference on your gun. So to put this back together, we take our spring, we put our bushing back in there, and then we just pop it back on, and that's the EDP. Now this, the firing pin safety, there it is, taken apart. The spring is supposed to be held captive. If you just push it in, okay, when you go to insert it back, that spring will fall out. So when you put this back together, if you take it apart for inspection or cleaning, whatever, you need to press it in there until it is captured, okay? If it falls out while you put it back in, it's going to cause you a world of pain, okay? So make sure that it's going to stick together. Then we have our firing pin assembly. To disassemble that, we're going to use the slide as a gunsmithing fixture, okay? It fits in this hole. If we put it in backwards with the firing pin lug either to the left or to the right, basically to keep it from going down in the slide, but I guess it really doesn't matter. But if you have it to the left or the right, it's going to hold it a little better, okay? Then what you do, and you have to be real careful with this, because if you mess this up, you're going to shoot these two spring cups out and away from the gun. And Glock are designed to fire with some pieces missing. This is not one of them. If you lose a spring cup, your gun's not going to work, okay? So be real careful. I stick my fingernail in the spring, put my hand over the spring cup so I don't lose them, and then all I'm going to do is just just pull that spring down and away from the spring cup, and then I'm just going to peel them off just like that. Then I'm going to let the spring pressure off, pull the spring off, pull the assembly out, and there I have a fully disassembled firing pin assembly. Now here's a spring cup. It takes two of them to work the gun, so don't lose them. Little bitty tiny thing. And these wear, okay? So you need to check them to make sure that they have all their size, that they haven't wore down. They do sell what they call maritime spring cups for shooting the gun underwater, right? But it's not as durable as a regular spring cup, and so Glock has them as a restricted item. You have to be law enforcement, your sheriff or chief has to sign a letter saying what they want, because if you fire a Glock underwater, the water doesn't compress, so you can hurt yourself. Okay, so let's put this thing back together. Firing pin goes in the little piece of plastic there. Put it back in the slide. Okay. Take my spring, depress my spring down, being really careful not to shoot the spring cup across the room. I'm going to lay it back in there. Then I'm going to gently let a little bit of pressure go to kind of capture it. Okay. Take the next one. I'm always good with the first. It's always the second one that gives me problems. Very carefully. See how it overlapped there? We don't want that. So pull the pressure back off, turn it around. There we go. See how the spring cups fit in there? Basically that is a collar around that firing pin. Okay? So that's all there is to it. To put the gun back together, it's pretty simple. Firing pin safety. I drop back in the hole. Okay. And you can see it there in the channel. take my extractor, push it in there, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to depress, hear it clip, click. Once it's depressed, it's going to slide around and it's going to hold it. Now if you keep pressing this button, you're going to keep releasing this thing, okay? So once you get it in there, quit pressing the button, okay? Take my EDP, drop my EDP in there, take my firing pin, got my firing pin in there, take my back cover, start sliding it in, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press down, get the back plate started over the firing pin, take my little punch, press down on my EDP, slide it over, snap it in, fully assembled Glock slide. Okay? Appreciate you watching. Till next time, you can always catch us online, www.tngun.com.